The haunting discovery made 7 years after they vanished. Before we begin, a quick heads up, the story you're about to hear is a work of fiction. It's designed to explore the unsettling feeling of an unsolved mystery. The names, the events, the details, they aren't real. This is pure storytelling. In the late fall of 2005, a hunter was tracking a deer deep in the sprawling, unforgiving forests of northern Maine. He stumbled on something that the state's largest ever search party had somehow missed. It wasn't a gruesome scene, and it didn't offer any clear answers to a question that had haunted the region for years. It was quieter than that, and in a way, much more unnerving. Snagged on the skeletal branch of a dead tree, miles from any marked trail, was a tattered piece of a child's jacket. The fabric was so sun-bleached and rotted, it had almost become part of the forest floor. For 7 years, the story of a missing father and his young son was a local ghost story, a warning whispered around campfires. But it wasn't the jacket itself that reignited the cold case with a new kind of horror. It was what an investigator found tucked deep inside its dirt-caked pocket. And what was hidden in that jacket would turn a 7-year mystery into a fresh nightmare. To understand its chilling importance, we have to go back to a crisp October weekend, just before the silence fell. Section 1, a final weekend. The year was 1998. For the Avery family, life moved to the simple rhythm of a small Maine town. School, work, and precious weekends spent exploring the vast wilderness in their backyard. The father, who we'll call David Avery, was a 42-year-old carpenter. He was a quiet, thoughtful man whose hands were calloused from a life of shaping wood. He respected nature deeply because he'd learned its language not from books, but from his own father. He knew how to read bent branches, animal tracks, and the shifts in the wind. To David, the wilderness was the greatest teacher there was. His 9-year-old son, Jacob, was his shadow. Jacob was a curious kid with a mop of brown hair, more at home with dirt under his nails than with video games. He collected rocks, knew bird calls by heart, and could spot poison ivy from a safe distance. His most prized possession was a little leather-bound journal from his dad, its pages filled with his drawings of leaves, bugs, and maps for imaginary adventures. David and Jacob's bond was forged in the outdoors. It was a quiet understanding that passed between them while fishing at dawn or watching a distant moose on a ridgeline. These trips were more than a hobby. They were a ritual. For David, teaching his son to survive in the woods was the most important legacy he could leave. For Jacob, these trips were the greatest adventures you could imagine, a chance to be with his hero in a world full of secrets. That weekend in October 1998 was supposed to be special, their annual trip to see the peak of the fall colors. The air was crisp, and the trees had exploded into a riot of red, orange, and gold. David had planned a route they'd hiked before, leading to a secluded campsite by a stream. He packed with care, a tent, warm sleeping bags, food for 3 days, a first aid kit, a compass, and a map. He wasn't a man who took chances. Jacob was buzzing with excitement. He had a new pocket knife and had spent the week practicing how to carve sticks under his dad's watchful eye. As they loaded up their old pickup truck that Friday, Jacob's mother, Sarah, watched from the porch. She said later how normal it all felt. David kissed her goodbye and promised to be careful. Jacob hugged her tight. "We'll bring you back the prettiest leaf in the whole forest," he promised with a huge, carefree grin. She waved as the truck rumbled down the gravel driveway. It was the last time she would ever see them. A park ranger saw them at the entrance to the state park. He remembered the truck and noted that David seemed well prepared. David pointed out their route on a map, and the ranger saw nothing to be concerned about. They were just another family heading out to enjoy a New England autumn. As the truck drove on and was swallowed by the forest, there was no sense of doom. just the quiet hum of an engine fading into the distance. Section 2. The Silence. The plan was simple. David and Jacob would be in the woods Friday night and all day Saturday. They'd pack up Sunday morning and be home by lunch, or mid-afternoon at the latest. Sunday morning started like any other for Sarah. Coffee was brewing, the news was on the radio, and the house felt quiet without David and Jacob. It was a familiar quiet, a temporary one. But when noon came and went, a tiny knot of worry started to form. It's nothing, she told herself. They're just soaking up the last few hours of their trip. David wasn't always a slave to the clock. She kept busy, glancing at the clock on the wall, its ticking seeming to grow louder every minute. By 3 o'clock, the worry had grown into a steady thrum of anxiety. The sun was getting low, and this was unusual. David was considerate. If they were going to be this late, he would have found a way to call. But the phone was silent. She stood on the porch, scanning the empty road, hoping to see their truck. Nothing. At 5 o'clock, with the sky turning purple, anxiety gave way to a cold, creeping dread. She called David's sister, her voice trembling. "Have you heard from them?" She hadn't. She called a few of his friends. Nothing. The routine was broken. The silence was no longer temporary. It was heavy. Something was wrong. With shaking hands, she finally dialed 911. She explained the situation, trying to keep her voice steady, detailing their planned route, their truck, David's experience. The dispatcher's professional questions sent a chill down her spine. When was the last time you heard from them? Any known medical conditions? The implication was clear. They had to consider every possibility, from an accident to a deliberate disappearance. Soon, a sheriff's deputy was at her door. By nightfall, the search was officially in motion. The first step was finding their truck. A ranger drove to the parking area near the trailhead David had mentioned. He found the pickup easily, parked right where it should be. It was locked. Everything inside looked normal. No signs of a struggle, no broken glass. The truck was simply there, a silent testament to a chilling fact. David and Jacob had gone into the forest, but they hadn't come out. Section 3. The Unforgiving Woods. Monday's sunrise lit up the first day of what would become one of the most massive search operations in Maine's history. The response was fast. The park's ranger station became a command center, with maps spread across every table, marked with grids and search zones. State police, park rangers, and the renowned Maine Warden Service, men and women who knew the state's wilderness better than anyone, all came together. They started with logic. Search teams headed for the trail David had planned to hike, believing the most likely answer was a simple accident, a fall, a twisted ankle. They expected to find them within a day or two. Helicopters chopped the air overhead, scanning the canopy of red and gold for any sign of life. But by the end of the first day, they had nothing. They'd combed the trail and the areas around it, but it was like David and Jacob had vanished the second they stepped off the gravel. No footprints, no broken branches, no dropped gear. As days blurred together, the search grew. Hundreds of civilian volunteers arrived, hunters, hikers, and locals who just wanted to help. The forest itself fought back. This wasn't a gentle park. It was a rugged, primeval wilderness of thick brush, steep ravines, and hidden bogs. That beautiful fall foliage? It was now the enemy, a visual screen that made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. A deep carpet of fallen leaves muffled every sound and hid any track they might have left. Search dogs were brought in, but even they became confused, their scents scattering on the wind or just vanishing into the damp earth. It was as if the forest was actively erasing any trace of them. After the first week, the mood turned grim. Optimism had faded, replaced by a dark determination. The theories shifted. Did they wander far off the trail? Did they run into a bear? Investigators looked into the Averys' personal lives for any reason David might have wanted to disappear. They found nothing. He was a stable, loving family man. The search lasted for weeks. Divers probed the icy depths of nearby ponds. And every day, Sarah Avery waited at the command post, her face a mask of hope and despair, watching the teams return at dusk, shaking their heads. Nothing. Finally, after nearly a month, with winter coming, the authorities made the call to suspend the official search. The chances of finding them alive were now zero. The operation had yielded not a single clue. Not a piece of clothing, not a candy wrapper, not one footprint. It was a complete blank. The forest had taken them, leaving behind a locked truck, a heartbroken family, and a vast, deep silence. The Avery case went cold. Section 4. The Long Silence. The years that followed were heavy and suffocating. For Sarah Avery, life became a question with no answer. How do you mourn people who aren't confirmed to be gone? How do you move on when a part of you is frozen in time, forever scanning a tree line for some sign of return? There was no closure, no grave to visit. In the town, people started speaking of the Averys in hushed tones. The story slowly changed from a news headline into local folklore, a cautionary tale told to kids about the dangers of straying from the path. The deep woods that bordered their town, once a place of beauty, now felt sinister. It was the place that had swallowed a man and a boy without a trace. With every passing year, hope dwindled. The official case file sat on a shelf, gathering dust. To the world, David and Jacob Avery were ghosts, their faces smiling from faded missing person posters. The vibrant colors of that fall in 1998 had long since faded into the gray of an unsolved mystery. 7 years went by. 7 long, silent winters and 7 empty summers, with the forest keeping its secrets locked away for good. Section 5. The Discovery. Then, in the fall of 2005, a hunter named Frank Miller was cutting his way through a remote part of that same wilderness. He was an old pro who avoided the main trails, seeking out the deep woods miles from anywhere. It was a part of the forest most people, including the original search parties, would have logically skipped. As he pushed through a thicket, a small patch of faded color on the ground caught his eye. He knelt down and brushed away the leaves. It was a rotted piece of fabric, the sleeve of a child's jacket. He almost dismissed it as old trash, but then he remembered the story of the father and son who had vanished all those years ago. A prickle of unease ran down his spine. He marked the spot and called the state police. Given the area's history, they took him seriously. A small team of investigators went back out with Frank as their guide. They found the piece of jacket right where he said it would be. As they started a careful search of the area, they found something more. About 50 yards deeper in, hidden in a shallow ditch, they found what was left of a makeshift campsite. A collapsed tent, its fabric shredded by years of weather. Rusted cans and a dented cooking pot. And there, among the debris, were the skeletal remains of 2 people, 1 adult, 1 child. After 7 long years, the search for David and Jacob Avery was over. Dental records would later confirm it was them. They'd been found. But this discovery didn't close the book on the Avery case. It started a terrifying new chapter. The campsite was a mess, suggesting a frantic, panicked departure, not a camp that was simply left to the elements. And why was it here, so far from their planned route, in a place so hard to reach? It made no sense for a meticulous planner like David. The medical examiner couldn't determine a cause of death. The remains were too decomposed. There were no obvious signs of an animal attack or foul play. Did they starve? Did they freeze? If so, why was their gear scattered like this? The mystery had only deepened. But the most unsettling clue was yet to come. As a forensic investigator carefully bagged the evidence, he picked up the tattered remains of the child's jacket. He felt something hard inside the pocket, protected from the weather all these years. Carefully, he pulled it out. It was Jacob Avery's small, leather-bound journal. The pages were warped and stained, but they still held the secrets of their final days. Section 6. The Journal. The discovery of Jacob's journal changed everything. It was a voice from beyond the grave, a possible first-hand account of what went wrong. In the lab, technicians painstakingly separated the fragile pages. What they found wasn't a clear story, but a fragmented, terrifying descent into fear. The first couple of entries were exactly what you'd expect from a 9-year-old on a camping trip, written in a child's looping pencil script. Asterisk, October 16th, 1998. We're here. Dad let me help put up the tent. We saw a deer on the way in. I named him Spike. We're going to have hot dogs for dinner. Best day ever. Asterisk, October 17th, 1998. Fishing this morning. I didn't catch anything, but Dad said that's why it's called fishing and not catching. He taught me how to find north with his watch. We heard a funny noise at lunchtime. Dad said it was just a woodpecker, but it sounded bigger. Asterisk. It was the next entry where the tone began to shift. The handwriting was more hurried, more slanted. Asterisk, October 17th, night. Can't sleep. The woodpecker is back. It's not a woodpecker. The sound is wrong. It sounds like someone is tapping on a tree with a rock. Tap, tap, tap. Dad told me to go to sleep. He has his big flashlight, but he won't turn it on. Asterisk. After that, the dated entries stopped. The next pages were a chaotic mess of thoughts and drawings. The kid's adventure was gone, replaced by a raw, creeping dread. Asterisk, we left the path. Dad said we had to. He said we needed to be quiet. I dropped my knife, but he wouldn't let me go back for it. He keeps looking over his shoulder. He looks scared. I've never seen him scared before. Asterisk. It's so cold now. We have to hide when we hear the tapping. It followed us. It's not a person. Dad saw it. He won't tell me what it was. He just said, stay quiet and don't look at it. His face was all white. Asterisk. The journal then showed a series of frantic, dark drawings. Not the happy sketches from before, but scribbled figures. One page showed a tall, stick-like shape with long, thin limbs standing between the trees. Another showed their tent with large, empty, eye-like circles drawn all around it. The final entries were barely readable, the pencil pressed deep into the paper. Asterisk, Dad is sick. He doesn't talk anymore. He just sits and watches the trees. The tapping stopped. Now it's a whisper. It sounds like my name. Jacob. Jacob. Asterisk. And then, the last entry. 2 words, scrawled in the middle of the final page, circled over and over. Asterisk, not alone. Asterisk. The journal ended there. It didn't offer a rational explanation or a real-world suspect. It was just the terrified record of a child's final days, pointing not to a blizzard or a bear, but to something else. Something they saw, something that followed them, and something that led them to abandon everything in a hidden corner of the woods. The journal didn't solve the mystery. It created a new one, far darker than anyone could have imagined. It suggested they weren't just lost. They were being hunted. Those words in that journal turned a tragic cold case into a chilling modern folktale. And if you find mysteries that defy easy explanation as compelling as I do, you should consider subscribing. We dig into the cases that logic can't quite solve, and you won't want to miss what's coming up next. But first, let's talk about the theories that came from those terrifying final words. Section 7. Theories and Speculation. The discovery of the remains in Jacob's journal gave the family a grim kind of closure, but it was just the beginning of the speculation. With the official cause of death listed as undetermined, theories range from the logical to the truly bizarre. First, there's the most straightforward explanation. They got lost, and succumb to the elements. Despite his experience, David could have made one bad navigational error. Panic could have set in, causing him to lead them further and further off the trail. In that state of fear and exhaustion, the mind plays tricks. The tapping and whispering could have just been the sounds of the forest twisted by paranoia. The stick figure in Jacob's drawing? Maybe a strangely shaped tree in the dark. It's a tragic, but entirely human, possibility. Then there's the foul play theory. Investigators had to consider it. What if David and Jacob stumbled upon something they weren't supposed to see? An illegal hunting camp, a drug operation, a fugitive's hideout. That would explain David's sudden fear and the desperate need to get off the trail and hide. The tapping could have been a signal between two people tracking them. In this version, they were stalked, terrorized, and eventually killed, with their deaths staged to look like an accident. With only skeletons left, it's a theory that's impossible to prove or disprove. But the journal pushed many people toward more unsettling ideas. That part of New England is full of folklore, legends of strange beings that live in the deep woods. Could the Averys have run into something from one of those old stories? A tall figure, an unnatural tapping, a voice whispering a name on the wind, the details fit. Could they have stumbled upon something ancient and territorial, the very thing those legends were created to warn people about? The final theory is perhaps the most tragic of all, a psychological break. Is it possible David Avery suffered a sudden, severe paranoid delusion? There's a rare condition known as folie à deux, or shared psychotic disorder, where a delusion can spread from one person to another, especially between a parent and a child. In this scenario, David believed they were being hunted by an imaginary threat, and his terror was so real that it became real for Jacob, too. His actions, fleeing into the remote wilderness, would have seemed perfectly logical to him. Jacob's journal would then be a heartbreakingly accurate account of his father's descent into madness. So where does that leave us? With shadows and echoes. We know where David and Jacob Avery's journey ended, in a forgotten camp, deep in the Maine wilderness. We know they were alive for some time after they went missing, and that their final days were filled with a terror so real, a 9-year-old boy wrote it all down. But the central question, the why, remains locked away in the forest. Was it a simple, tragic case of getting lost? Were they victims of a human predator? Or did they run into something else out there, something that doesn't fit into our understanding of the world? The discovery in 2005 gave some answers, but it offered no real comfort. It replaced the pain of the unknown with the horror of the unknowable. Jacob's journal is a chilling final message from a lost little boy. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes, even when the missing are found, the true story remains lost forever, whispered only among the trees. The file on David and Jacob Avery may be closed, but the mystery is more open and more haunting than ever. What do you think happened in those woods? Let me know your theories in the comments below.